Hello there everyone, welcome to episode 49 of my flight from Bavaria to New Zealand in the C172. Here we are at Abu Dhabi Airport and we're on our way to Abu Dhabi International. There's a ground crew chap there. Gonna jump into the airplane and get her started pretty quickly here. Going to take the yokes out just for the start sequence. I am pretty sure that I cannot get a pushback. The first thing I'm going to do is just turn the radios on to see if I can signal ground crew for a pushback. And I'm pretty sure I can't. Yeah, there's no pushback availability here. So I'm going to select runway 13 for my takeoff because I want to take off towards the east anyway. And we'll shut the little ATC menu down, turn the radios back off, park brake on, fuel on, drop the altimeter down. Well, that's interesting. Seems to calibrate the wrong way. Going up is rotating it clockwise, going down is rotating anti-clockwise. I wonder if it's supposed to be that way. Or is it the... No. It's counterintuitive. Interesting. Seems to be the wrong way around. I can hear some vehicles buzzing around. I think I've got something right behind me there. Yeah, some sort of vehicle. And I'm going to have to do a pretty sharp turn to get out of here once I'm started. It's possible my wing leading edge is going to knock that guy's block off, but we'll find out when it comes time. Radios are now off. Let's get a bit of fuel in the engine. Not too much there. And we'll start up in just a second. Pretty much ready to go then. Checking that everything's clear all around. Brakes are in the on position. And there we are, engine is started. Just got to bring the RPM back so it sits on about 1,000. Don't want to rev the engine too much while it's still cold. Quick check through, plenty of fuel. Got minimal fuel flow. Get the alternator on now too, just so everything else comes up, amperage and whatnot. Instruments look fine. I'm going to set our heading for about 70 degrees, or 65 or so. I do find that this heading indicator here jumps forward with very large increments when you click, and if you hold it down it goes in smaller increments, but then it's very difficult to stop. So it's a bit tricky using this actually. I much prefer the way it's been modeled in other sims. It's just not particularly user friendly. It's probably designed for gaming controllers or something. Right, we'll also get a few electrics on now. Beacon, taxi, nav and strobe. Don't need the landing light just yet. Yokes can go back in place now that we don't need them anymore. Handbrake is still on. I will now request taxi. And for that, we're going to need avionics. Second bus coming on now. Our heading apparently to Abu Dhabi is 68 degrees for 45 miles, so it's not far, 45 nautical. Not far at all. 68, which is about where I've got my indicator set, within QE at least anyway. Let's talk to ATC. Well, it's uncontrolled, so we can't actually talk to ATC here. This menu system bugs me a little. We will go announce our taxi. Taxiing to runway 13. Brakes can come off now. Foot brakes on. Checking that the ground is clear behind. I'm going to make a right hand turn here. So a bit of power on. Get that steering over, and there goes that guy's head. Knock his block off with the wing there. We'll taxi over to the runway, do some run-up checks before we get airborne quickly. Confirming that the flaps are up just with my hand on the flap indicator. Right, slow the aeroplane right down. I'm going to do a flaps up takeoff as usual. No need for a short takeoff here. Got plenty of runway. think I just need to recenter my track IR a little bit. It's a little bit off center there. Brakes on. We'll hold short for just a moment. I'll keep the foot brakes on for this run-up check. Set for 1600 RPM or so. And I just want to check we get an RPM drop and we get an engine tone change on the mags. Good. Good. Okay, that's both of those done. We're ready for takeoff. Quick check of the airspace to make sure no one's on approach. That way is clear. That way is clear. It's uncontrolled. We're taxiing out. We don't need permission. We're not going to get it anyway, even if we did need it. It's going to be a right-hand turn for me. Straight onto 1-3, which is the runway heading. And I'm just going to roll straight on out. I'm not going to line up and waste anybody's time here. Pushing forward on the throttle till I'm happy that we've got good airspeed, good ground speed, and everything's looking rather alive. Gently back on the stick and up we go. Windsock is telling me we've got a strong breeze from the right, but it's possible that it's just not rendered in properly. The windsock over there, that might suddenly change as we get close. Is it going to? There it is. Now it's flaccid and indicating a slight crosswind from the left. I've noticed that in Microsoft Flight Simulator it tends to just not work, shall we say. There's a lot of stuff actually which doesn't work. The more you fly this, the more you realize how many things don't actually function. We'll raise the position up a little and I'm going to bring the mixture back. We'll gain some extra RPM. Put a bit more air into the mix and we'll get some lights off. Oh, that trim just took a massive jump then. I just adjusted the trim. Wow, it's really, really super sensitive on the trim. It's going to take a while to get used to that. Okay, that'll do that. Get rid of this bad boy and taxi lights off. That's it. We leave everything else on. Going to climb to about 2,500 feet. Then we'll make our heading. Actually, we'll make the heading now and then we'll keep climbing. I think I'm going to bring this marker just a notch. No, I will take it a notch left. I'll just fly slightly north of my intended track on the map because that'll hopefully bring us right over Abu Dhabi City. T's and P's. Fuel flow's good. Fuel quantity is good. Temperatures and pressures look fine. All the instruments seem to be working. Aircraft seems to be flying. So far, there is no imminent threat of death. We're a bit slow in this climb, but it's not going to be a long climb. Hitting 1,500 now. Airspeed's really low, 75 to 80 knots. I suppose it's not too bad for a climb, but could be better. There we go. 80 is quite nice actually for a climb. I do like to have a bit of forward airspeed. Once I get to my 2500, I'm going to level off, bring the RPM back a fraction, we'll let the autopilot take over, and then we will start reading Johnny Johnson's wing leader from where we left off during the last video, the last flight. We're midway through the Tangmere wing chapter. which is about 1941, early mid 1941. So we'll get on with reading that in just a moment. Going to level off now, bring the attitude down first. Now bring the power back. I'll go with about 2400 RPM. And autopilot can take over. Getting an altitude, feet off the rudder pedals, just keeping an eye on this aeroplane now to make sure that it does settle on that heading that I've set for it. I'm a bit south of my desired track, but we are tracking left of it, so we'll cross over with it eventually. Distance to my destination is 40 nautical miles, so we've covered a ninth of the distance already, which means it's time to read, I think. Got a really nice view down the side of the cockpit there. It's a pretty impressive sight. These cockpits, quite good looking. I'm going to try and give you a slightly nicer view than nothing for the way out. This is probably going to skip suddenly the view in a second once MSFS realizes the track IR has been disabled. Yep. So we're going to move the view in like this about. Get a little bit of the outside showing there. And I'm picking up the book and we'll continue reading. So, as I said before, this is 1941. The chapter is Tang mir Wing, and we've just finished off reading about Jagdgeschwader 26, the German unit which was based at ABV and commanded by Adolf Galland. We are also just talking in this chapter about the beehive attacks that the RAF were conducting. So let's get on with reading. The enemy pilots surprised us with a skillful and brave ruse. In addition to their steep, fast dives, they eased their way into the beehive, sometimes assisted by the clever use of cloud cover, just as if they were four Spitfires protecting the bombers. The silhouette of the 109 was not unlike the Spitfire, and in any case we were not looking for four cool-headed pilots who slowly worked their way into our midst. Often this type of stealthy attack was timed to coincide with others from the flanks and high astern, and we were taken unawares. Sometimes individual Messerschmitt pilots took advantage of any cloud formations below the bombers. They would shadow the Blenheims or the Bostons, hiding themselves in the cloud as much as possible. Then, in an opportune moment when other attacks developed from above and behind, they would dart out of the cloud immediately below the bombers, pull their fighters into a near stall attitude, and fire a long burst before they half rolled back to the sanctuary of the cloud. This tactic achieved some success, and deservedly, for it took a brave man to fly alone into the beehive. But Galland and his colleagues probably realized the confusion caused by far too many escort fighters, and they took full advantage of our dilemma. At about this time we heard that some of the 11 group squadrons were re-equipping with Spitfire 5As and 5Bs. The engine of the Spitfire 5 was only slightly bigger than that of our 2s, and consequently there was little difference in performance. As a side note, that's interesting to hear. I'm not sure that's entirely accurate, but we'll let it slide. The 5A still carried 8 machine guns, but the 5B had 2 20mm cannon and only 4 machine guns. Cannons would be useful to smash through the armoured plate of the enemy bombers, and would also improve our chances against the 109s. We thought that the most important difference between the Spitfire 2 and the 5 was that the former was fitted with fabric ailerons, whilst the latter had an improved metal type. In the air, the difference in performance was quite remarkable, for the previous heavy stick pressures were greatly reduced and the rate of roll at high speeds was more than doubled. In other words, the lateral manoeuvrability of the Spitfire was improved tremendously with the introduction of metal ailerons. The new ailerons were exactly the same size and shape as their fabric counterparts, and there was no technical reason why they should not be fitted to our present Spitfires, provided we could get hold of them. Our intelligence system went into action, and we found that the new ailerons were being manufactured at the Air Service Training Facility at Hamble, near Southampton. We flew to the airfield and met the test pilots and the managerial staff. Everyone was flat out to help, and it was arranged that the squadron's aircraft should be flown in one by one for the modification to be carried out at Hamble. Test pilots would put each Spitfire through its paces after the new ailerons were fitted and test them for trim and balance. Various pieces of paper would have to be signed by the pilot when they collected their Spitfires. We would have signed anything to get our hands on those new ailerons. Bada was the first to fly his Spitfire to Hamble, and an hour later I landed in the Maggie to collect him. We flew back together, highly pleased with the result of our negotiations and the fact that it had all been achieved in a matter of days simply because we dealt directly with the factory. But about a year later, I received an official letter requiring an explanation as to why 616 Squadron had decided to fit metal ailerons to its Spitfire 2s. Who had authorised the work at Hamble, and to what department should it be charged? In my reply, I said that as a pilot officer at the time, I had little voice in policy matters, but perhaps Bada, who was a prisoner of war, or Burton, who was fighting in the desert, could throw further light on the affair. We heard nothing more about this incident. The squadron's total of kills and the scores of individual pilots began to mount now that the 109s opposed our daily escorts and sweeps. Cocky had already opened his 1941 account against the Luftwaffe, and both Bada and Burton had confirmed kills. Some of the sergeant pilots who joined the squadron after me scored against the 109s, and although I tangled with the Messerschmitts on numerous occasions, it seemed as if there just wasn't time to select my own opponent from the maelstrom of fighters when we jockeyed and twisted for an opening. For me, it was a period of acute frustration. My job, as one of the two wingmen in Bada's Finger 4, was to guard the remainder of the section from a flank or stern attack, while Smith did likewise from his position on the port side. So my head was usually turned to the left or strained right around so that I could watch our rear. We had little idea of what lay ahead, but we knew from the radio chatter and our own manoeuvres when Bada was working his way into a bunch of 109s. Then, suddenly, we were in the middle of a fight, watching the spurts of white smoke from Bada's guns, darting a glance ahead to see a couple of 109s surprisingly near and half rolling away, calling a break as other enemy formations streaked out of the sun, bunching up in the cockpit the better to take the G as we turned to meet the attack, always watching our leader, fighting down the natural instinct to fasten onto a 109 and follow him, kicking our top rudder to hold the outside position on top of a turn, falling too far behind Beta and almost laughing out loud when, in the midst of all the turning and cavorting and sweating, Flying Officer Dundas admonished Wing Commander Bada, "I say, dog's body, we haven't all got metal ailerons." And the reply straight back, "Okay, Cocky, don't panic, reform." And then there's not a Hun to be seen in the sky, and we cross out at Dunkirk in our wide, easy formation. Back at West Hamnet, the wing leader would sketch the complete pattern of our skirmish. A dozen 109s had been sighted below us, but Stan had warned of two more gaggles above his own squadron. One of these enemy formations had come down, and that was when we broke hard to the left and the 109s had stayed to fight. Bada had fired at one, and it had poured black smoke. Cocky and Smith nod their heads, and Smith says he saw large pieces fly off. I had not even seen this particular 109, so swift moving was the engagement. Bada continues his summary of the fight. Ken drives over from the other side of the airfield with his story, and Stan phones his account from his airfield on the other side of Chichester. The group captain has listened attentively to all of this, and now he speaks. Yes, the two high formations climbed up from the Aberville area, and the bottom gaggle came from Rouen. All of the jigsaw pieces of information lock together, and the picture is complete. The wing has knocked down a few 109s, and we have no losses. We drive back to Shopwick House for lunch, and I feel as if I am being carried on a surging tide of events over which I have little control. The trouble was that the rigid duties of a wingman were a basic contradiction of one's natural instinct to seize on a 109, follow him down to ground level if necessary, fasten one's teeth into him, and not let go until he hit the deck and burst open like a rotten egg. Had we obeyed these instincts and broken formation to chase our own opponents, we should have been thrown out of the Tangmere wing within a few minutes of landing. Although we didn't fully realize it at the time, we were serving a valuable apprenticeship to a skilled master, and our turn would come if we had the patience and the luck to wait for the right opportunity. For the main task of a wingman was not to shoot down Huns, but to guard his leader from attack. We flew hard during these weeks, and with this added experience we were able to grasp a firmer picture of our air battles. We learned to clear our flanks and rear just as our leader launched his attack, and then for a few seconds to concentrate on what lay ahead. We found that if we flew almost abreast of the wing leader, we could fasten onto our own 109 once Bader had selected his opponent. Sometimes I led a pair of Spitfires in either the wing leader's or the CO's section, and there seemed to be more time to think and act than when I sweated out the operation as a wingman. Over gravelling one day, the 109s angled in from the sun, and were almost within firing range before they were spotted. A voice shrieked over the radio, "Brake, dog's body, brake!" And without waiting for further advice, I reefed the Spitfire into a tight spiral. After 2 turns, I was satisfied that no 109 clung to my tail, and I eased out of the turn. Immediately ahead of me, not more than 300 yards away, 3 Messerschmitts climbed steeply as if they were being hauled up 3 sides of a pyramid. Their prey at the apex of the pyramid was a solitary Spitfire flying straight and level, and although I didn't know his call sign, I shouted out to him, "For Christ's sake, brake!" But it was too late, for the combined fire of the 109s smashed into his belly, and the exploding cannon shells ripped over his port wing like a cross-cut saw slicing through a wooden plank. The wing drifted down, lazy as an autumn leaf, but the crippled Spitfire fell into a vicious spin. The Messerschmitts stayed to fight, and the sky was full of aircraft. It was a dangerous place for a lone pilot, and they looked around, always turning for the nearest section of Spitfires so that I could join forces. Suddenly a 109 arced up in front of me at 2 o'clock, and the enemy pilot put his aircraft into a gentle dive. I was very close to him, and I could see the square wingtips and the tail struts of a 109E. A large black arrowhead, together with the number 4, were painted on the dirty grey-black camouflage, and there were orange markings on the rudder. I swung my Spitfire to get behind him, and I thought, this is it, nail him and get out. Clear your tail first. I was dead line astern of the Messerschmitt, and I hit him behind the cockpit with 8 machine guns. As the range closed, I contrived to spray the 109 with bullets, and the pilot half rolled onto his back and jettisoned into the hood. I remembered Billy Burton's precise instructions concerning enemy pilots who bailed out. I will court-martial any member of the squadron who fires at a parachute. But this chap was still inside the cockpit, and I hammered him once more. A shapeless bundle broke away from the Messerschmitt, and when I circled to watch it, I saw the parachute break open. Feeling a deep exultation at this, I drove the Spitfire around in a steep, tail-clearing turn, since the combat had perhaps lasted several seconds and much could happen in this time. But the sky seemed empty of all aircraft, and I sped across the channel and landed at Hawkinge to refuel. Several pilots of the Tangmere wing were already there, and some had seen the parachute, so that my first kill was easily confirmed. Okay, we are arriving now over Abu Dhabi, and according to my screen displays, I am 13 nautical miles out from the destination, so it's time to turn track IR back on, center it here. I'll just zoom out. Oh, the zoom wheel is also oh, hello, why is that showing? Okay, I don't know why that's turned on. I really don't like these points of interest. I thought I'd disabled those, so I'm really sorry that that giant icon is showing there. I don't think it's possible for me to remove that whilst we're in flight, so just try and ignore it. I'll try and look away. This is Abu Dhabi below us. It doesn't really look very much like Abu Dhabi, to be honest. The buildings here all seem to be very sort of low industry buildings. This has been quite badly built, I must say. In reality, this is almost entirely high rise. You can see there's a bit of medium high rise over there, but it's not nearly as built up as it is in real life, although I think the center of Abu Dhabi is probably back over that way. I need to check quickly the GPS. Okay, so the airfield should, or the airport should be off in that direction. Now I think I see it in the distance over there, which is good news. And then we've got the Formula One track over there and the Ferrari stuff, that red texture that's in the distance. Okay, so we are actually on the outskirts of Abu Dhabi, so this is probably fairly representative then of the buildings at this location. You can see there's a lot of trucks lined up everywhere, so this is clearly a lot of freight and cargo happening around here. I'm very tempted to drop down to lower altitudes for a bit of a flight through here, but it doesn't look that interesting. There's the motorway. It's a little bit ugly. So I don't think it's going to look particularly amazing just by being down low. And the buildings in the distance aren't really rendering, so it's all flat off in that direction. There's, I think, a golf course down there, potentially in amongst all those mini lakes. So some of the money's being spent around these parts. Leisure activities, housing developments. I'm going to change our radio now to Abu Dhabi International. Now, is it OMAG? There it is, OMAA. We'll just get the ATIS quickly. And then we'll quickly tune in. I need the temperature, I need the pressures. Apparently there's a few clouds at 900 feet and a few clouds at 12,000 feet. That's absolute nonsense. 29.67 on the altimeter. 29.67, that's what we're on. Tune to tower. I think we can request a full stop landing. Right, 6 miles, echo, right. Enter left base, runway 13. Left base for runway 13. Now, runway 13 is the one that's off to the right. How is this going to be a left base? How is it possible that I can do a left base? That's really strange. So I'm going to have to overfly the airfield and then turn into a left hand. Very strange instructions. They should have just told me to vector left out there and then vector around and come back in, or do a left base for the other runway. Left base for a 1-3 right. That's so strange. I never quite understand how they... organize the ATC instructions. So we're going to be using 1-3 right, which is the one I'm about to fly over. And I've been instructed to do a left base onto it. Ah, jeez. Fine. Time for AP to come off. Bring the RPM on this airplane back to about 2100. I'm going to fly straight over the field and then looking for 1-3 right. This could be 1-3 right coming up underneath me. It's either this one here or it's that one there. But this is right and 1-3 goes that way. So it should be 1-3 right. That should be the threshold for a 1-3 right. Gonna fly straight over the top of the terminals. The photography here is so old, I'm pretty sure it doesn't look like this down here. It's pretty shocking, it's pretty ugly. This is one of the largest, busiest airports in the world. Certainly in the Middle East. It's up there with Dubai. Just not seeing. And the ground textures look really poor. I've got the textures on about medium, but everything is showing up at really, really close range. So I'm going to actually try and bump the textures up a bit, I think, for future flights. Because I'm getting really good frame rates. So frame rates aren't a problem. Playing in 1440p. I had really, really good looking terrain and everything looked gorgeous when I was flying over. That's 1-3 left. Okay, good. When I was flying some of the testing when I first got this, but since flying now a few legs of this, oh dear, it's starting to look really rubbish. Okay. Yes, I know I'm clear to land. I'm going to start a left-hand turn now. This is such a strange way to be called into this airfield. I think X-Plane 11 does a far better job with its airfield operations instructions, although X-Plane 11 still does some crazy things like send you into hillsides with regularity. I need to drop down to 1,000 feet before I turn on to final. That's 1-3 left underneath me. I'm doing the right thing here, as instructed, but it's the wrong thing for making this airfield work without people killing each other. My threshold that I'm going to land at is over there. That should be 1-3 right. Soak off some more altitude as we come around the bend. 1,500. Landing checks. Landing light on. I'm going to turn the taxi light on now just to save ourselves a bit of time later. Mixture, I'll go full rich. I'll leave the pump where it is. Not going to turn the pump on. Cockpit security. Flaps are still in the up position. I'm not going to put any flap down yet at all. Not until I'm happy that we're on a reasonable approach, which may not be easy because I am at a bit of high altitude. 1,000. I'd like to be at 500, but hey, I'm double the height I need to be at or want to be at. Actually, it's not looking so bad now that we're down low and a lot more of the building detail is rendering in. It's just that when you're at about 2,000 to 3,000 feet, things can look a bit rough. Rolling out on a final heading of 1-3. Can put the flaps down now. Didn't sound like there was much in the way of wind. I also don't see any aircraft taxiing or lining up. I'm pretty confident that we've got a nice safe run in here. Get some power on now. Is this a nice flat approach with a low airspeed for once? It might be. Doing 50, 55, this is a slow approach. I can afford to put some power on. Yeah, look at that. I'm actually flat for once. That should say 13R, which it does. Fuel. Okie dokie. I'm a little bit high according to the pappy lights on the left, so I can afford to bleed off some of that. There we go. 2 reds and 2 whites. That'll do nicely. Airspeed is a bit quick. This is a thin little runway. Wow. Okay, 50. And let's get that nose wheel down at the same time. Not my greatest of landings, not my greatest hit, but still totally acceptable. We are down at Abu Dhabi Internazionale. Flaps coming up now. Looking for an exit. I think I found one. Charlie on the right here. Charlie, you're the winner. It's really annoying how stuff is quite hard to see unless you're zoomed in, but that's just the penalty for having lots of stuff rendering on a small screen. If I had a giant 45-inch screen, then everything would look a lot bigger and I'd just be able to see stuff without having to zoom in all the time. It's the same with the combat flight sims. Rendering lots of things on a small piece of glass in front of your face always makes things at long range harder to see, and the bigger your screen, obviously the closer to real life it gets and the easier it is to see stuff. I have no idea where I'm supposed to be parking here, so I might just tune to ground if there is one. Acknowledge ground handoff, tune to ground. Request taxi to gates, request taxi to parking. Okay. Parking via taxiway Delta. Where the hell is Delta? Well, the GA parking's over here. It would be really great if there was an in-cockpit airport card that I could just quickly bring up that had all the taxiways labelled, but there isn't. So I don't actually know where taxiway Delta is. I'm going to assume that I've just used it because this looks very GA-like over here. So I'm going to park in among the GA aeroplanes. Looks like I've got a slot over here between this blue one and the green one. That'll do me nicely, I think. Slot in here. Don't mind if I do, thank you very much. Bit of brakes on. Roll forward a fraction more. Okay, brakes on. Handbrake on. Love it. I will turn the radios off because we don't need those anymore. Do I need to tell these guys that I'm shutting down ground services? Nope. Don't need to tell them anything. Close that. Radios off. Taxi and landing light off. Nav light no longer required. I'll lean the mixture. Fuel shut off, back out. Those two things are all tickety-boo. Battery and master off. Remaining lights off. Mags away. Cockpit is secure. Let's go to the outside views. We are at Abu Dhabi International. There's the view. Little taxiing happening behind us. We've got airport noises, but it's not a particularly attractive airfield the way it's been modelled. I don't know. I'm quite keen to get out of this part of the world, to be honest. The desert and the way it's all looking isn't particularly interesting. I want to find mountains again, Gandalf. Alright, that's it. Episode 49 coming up on 50 soon. The milestone flight. Thanks for watching. See you again.